The vanishing of the SODDER children. There are mysteries buried so deep they slip through the cracks of time, forgotten and untold, stories so dark that the truth they conceal becomes a shadow, waiting for the right person to uncover them. In the quiet town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, there's a story that's never been told in full, a story of vanishing families, strange disappearances, and a secret that stretches across generations. This is the tale of the hidden forces at work, binding the fates of many. It was Christmas Eve, 1945. The air was cold, but inside the SODDER home, the warmth of the fire and the laughter of children filled the air. George and Jenny SODDER sat beside the fireplace, their 9 children scattered around, enjoying the festivities. Outside, a blanket of snow covered the quiet town, the soft glow of streetlights flickering through the windows. The family had made their way through the day, decorating the house, baking cookies, and preparing for the Christmas morning gifts. Everything seemed perfect, as if nothing could disrupt their happiness, but little did they know, the night would mark the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. A fire broke out around midnight, catching the upper floors of the house in an inferno that spread far too quickly for anyone to escape. The house, which had been the family's sanctuary, was consumed by flames in mere minutes. Jenny and George tried desperately to get to their children, but the fire had already trapped the upper floors, the smoke thick and suffocating. Jenny said, frantic, shouting, "George, the children, where are they?" George said, rushing to the door, "They're upstairs, we have to save them." The fire department arrived within minutes, but it was already too late. By then, the fire had ravaged the house. When the firefighters searched the wreckage, they found no trace of the children. There were no bodies, no remains, nothing. The firefighters were baffled. How could 5 children disappear without a single trace? It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The official report declared their deaths, but the lack of evidence raised more questions than answers. The mystery of the SODDER children's disappearance would soon become a haunting chapter in the town's history. Despite official reports declaring their deaths in the fire, the SODDER family refused to believe it. Jenny and George clung to the belief that their children had somehow escaped. But why had no one seen them since that night? And where were their bodies? How could 5 children simply disappear in the blink of an eye? Years later, the mystery deepened. A photograph surfaced, one that would stir a new round of questions. In the background of a seemingly innocent picture, a shadowy figure could be seen lurking, watching. The figure was unrecognizable, a person who had never been seen before, not by the SODDERs or anyone else. Who was this figure? Was this the key to the mystery? George, looking at the photograph, whispering, "Who is that? Who could have been there?" Jenny, voice shaking, "They're watching us, George, watching us all these years." The theories began to circulate. The official version was clear. The children had died in the fire, but no remains had ever been found. Local investigators, outsiders, and even paranormal enthusiasts began to weigh in, offering different explanations. Some believed the children had escaped the fire, but where could they have gone? Others suggested something far more sinister, kidnapping, foul play, or even something darker that no one dared to speak of. As the years passed, the whispers grew louder. Some townsfolk insisted they had seen the children after the fire. Others swore that they had been involved in an underground movement taken away by forces beyond the understanding of ordinary folk. Jenny and George clung to the hope that their children were alive, and the mystery of that night would never leave them.
Part 2. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. In 1922, across the ocean, in a secluded farmhouse in rural Germany, another story of strange disappearances and sinister forces would unfold. The Gruber family, like the Sodders, had been living a quiet, peaceful life in their remote farmhouse. It was a life of isolation, away from the bustling towns and cities, surrounded only by farmland and the constant hum of daily labour. But something was wrong. For days leading up to the murder, the family reported strange noises coming from the attic, as if someone or something was hiding in the shadows above them. In the dead of winter, when the wind howled through the cracks of the old farmhouse, strange footsteps echoed from above. The Gruber family, particularly the matriarch, was unnerved. Whispers filled the air as they wondered if someone was living among them, hidden in the attic, watching their every move. But who could it be? And why didn't they hear anything during the day? 6 members of the Gruber family were found brutally murdered one fateful night. The killings were shockingly violent, each family member slaughtered in their beds. The killer had used tools from the family's own workshop, making the murders even more chilling. But perhaps the most horrifying detail was that the killer seemed to have been living in the house for weeks, feeding the animals, hiding in the attic. There was no sign of forced entry. The farmhouse, isolated and locked at night, showed no signs of struggle. The family members were killed while they slept, but who could have done it? How could someone remain undetected for so long? Strange noises had been heard in the attic days before, and yet, when the authorities arrived, no one had any answers. The murder weapon had been owned by the Gruber family themselves, making it seem as if the killer had been part of their world all along. There were no traces of an intruder, no footprints in the snow, no signs of forced entry. But what if this wasn't just a random act of violence? The Grubers had made an unusual trip to Fayetteville shortly before their deaths. They had travelled to a quiet town, unknown to many. What had brought them there? And could it be possible that their meeting with someone or something had sealed their tragic fate? There's a chilling thought that lingers. What if Fayetteville was more than just a town? What if the same dark forces that had taken the SODDER children were also responsible for the deaths of the Grubers? Part 3. The Disappearance of the Beaumont Children. In 1966, halfway across the world in Adelaide, Australia, another story emerged. A mysterious case that would captivate the public and remain unsolved for decades. The Beaumont children, Jane, Anna and Grant, vanished without a trace while on a day trip to the beach. The 3 siblings, ages 9, 7 and 4, were last seen walking down a beachside path toward the sand. Their parents believed they were safe, but when they returned to pick them up later that afternoon, the children were gone. A search began immediately, but no sign of the children was ever found. The beach had been crowded with families that day, and yet no one had seen the children leave. What followed was an exhaustive search that stretched across Australia, with detectives and volunteers combing through every inch of the area, but nothing was discovered. The case baffled investigators, and despite countless theories, the disappearance of the Beaumont children remains one of Australia's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Some theories suggest that the children were abducted by a stranger, while others propose that they may have been lured away by someone they knew. In the years following their disappearance, strange reports surfaced of people claiming to have seen the Beaumont children in various locations, but nothing concrete ever emerged. In the years that followed, the disappearance became more than just a tragedy. It became a symbol of the unknown, a dark reminder of the forces at work behind the scenes. Was there something bigger at play here? Something tying the Beaumont children's disappearance to the tragedies of the Sodders and the Grubers? The whispers of a larger, unseen hand manipulating events began to surface.
Part 4. The Smiley Face Killers. Fast forward to the 1990s, after the mysterious deaths of the Grubers, the Sodders, and the Beaumont children. A new pattern began to emerge, linking a series of deaths across the Midwest. These deaths, seemingly unrelated at first, carried a chilling clue: the presence of a smiley face symbol. It was found carved into trees, spray-painted on walls, and even written in chalk at various crime scenes. The cases were unsettling at first. Young men found drowned, often after a night out, and their deaths initially written off as accidents. But as the pattern emerged, something far darker seemed at play. There was always a smiley face, an eerie, mocking symbol, left behind at each site. What did it mean? Was it the signature of a killer? Or was it something far more sinister? As investigators began to dig deeper, a disturbing theory emerged. These deaths were not random. They were part of something larger, a dark conspiracy that spanned decades. But the investigators who dared to look deeper found themselves caught in the web. Were they being watched? Were they part of something far bigger? Jack, investigator, whispering to himself, "This is bigger than we thought. The smiley face. It's not just a symbol, it's a signature, a calling card." Jack, a seasoned investigator, became obsessed with the connection between these drownings. As he pieced together the evidence, a horrifying realization began to take shape. The smiley face was not just a mark, it was a warning. A sign that someone or something was pulling the strings behind these deaths. Part 5. The Secret Society. Jack's investigation led him to a hidden ledger, one that detailed the dark history of a secret society operating in Fayetteville. This society had been manipulating events for generations, shaping the fates of families, orchestrating disappearances, and controlling the wealth and power of the town. The smiley face was not just a symbol of death. It was the society's signature. The deeper Jack dug, the darker the truth became. The society had been orchestrating deaths, disappearances, and even the tragedies of the Sodder and Gruber families. They had ties to the most powerful families in Fayetteville. They controlled everything. And as Jack uncovered the depth of their control, he realized that the shadows had never truly disappeared. They had simply grown darker. The story of the Sodder children, the Gruber family, the Beaumont children, and the smiley face killers is far from over. The dark forces at work remain hidden in plain sight, buried too deep to be fully understood. Some truths may never see the light of day, but one thing is certain: the shadows grow longer with each passing year, and Fayetteville's darkest secrets are yet to be revealed.